Today you are going to learn step by step how to create a fully autonomous children's book factory using N8N and artificial intelligence. A system that each day on its own chooses a theme, creates a character, writes a story, generates all the illustrations, assembles them into a complete PDF book, and updates its own progress in a spreadsheet. This is the workflow that you are going to learn how to do today. You already know that if you want this and other workflows totally ready to use, you can enter the link of our community, Minted Well. You can find it in the description below. Alright, once inside our canvas in N8N, the first step we need to do and add is a schedule trigger. This is an alarm clock for our entire system. It has a simple setup. It goes off once a day, allowing the whole flow to start working. Alright, let's check out the first agent then. This first agent is in charge of choosing the topic of our interest. It is configured with a preloaded list of themes. This with the intention that it does not have problems when generating an idea and avoid problems in the generation of images through OpenAI. This is simple. We tell him that he is an agent who is in charge of creating a theme for a children's book, and that they be careful with a series of alignments to avoid problems when generating the images. This node is connected to 3 tools. The first is an output parser, and this node helps us to. The node of this agent generates information in a specific structure. In addition, he is also connected to OpenAI, which would be his brain, and to a tool that is. This allows the agent to process a little more information and give us more concise answers. Let's review the result. He generated the following topic for us. Let's move on to the next agent. Alright, the role of this agent is to pick a character. Let's go in and review the settings together. This agent has 2 prompts. One is your user message and a system prompt. Let's review each one. This is the configuration that you have to have in place on each of the agents that we are going to review. This dynamic tag comes from the previous node. From this, you simply have to drag and drop, and that would be it. Well, check the prompt, and this can be fully customizable to what you are looking for. Here we give our agent a role. We tell them that they are professional in character creation and character design, and their role is to create a character that is visually pleasing and safe for children. It is very important that we maintain certain guidelines to avoid having failures when creating images with the OpenAI API. We are going to run it and we are going to review its result. Alright, it just generated a character and a description of the character. This node also has 3 tools. The first is OpenAI, which is a language model. This is very easy. You simply have to enter and configure your credentials here. It also has its own parser that this again ensures that the result and output is in a unique format as we need it. In addition, it has its ERC tool, which allows it to reflect more on the answers it does not give and gives better results. We've set up a Google. For the next node, we have set up a Google Sheets node. What this node allows us to do is keep track of what is being created in our Google. For that, we are going to come to Google Sheets, connected to our Google account. This template allows us to keep track of the topic, the final link of the file we are producing, and the status, if the status is in process or created. Let's go back to our workflow to set it up together. The first step would be to add our credentials. This is the most important step, as that allows you to connect with all of our files. In operation, we select Append Row. Here we look for the document we are working with. In this case, its name is Books. We look for it and select it. It is also very important to select the sheet on which we are doing our work. Have this option selected, Map Ethical manually, and this allows the configuration that we have in this node to be in the same column that we have in our Google Sheets spreadsheet. This is a simple expression of Google Sheets, which allows us to change rows. And we take this dynamic label from the first agent. It helps us to keep track of the issue we are working on. The link has subsequently been filled in once we have the final work. And status, we let it be in process for you to update the spreadsheet with this. We're going to run it, and we're going to check out the output of our Google Sheets. Alright, it's changed the status to in process. It's added the topic, and let's see, it's correct. Alright, this node is ready. Let's move on to the next one and check out its settings. We already have the people who are in charge of generating the theme of our story. We already have the people who are in charge of generating the character, and we have our database configured. The next step is to generate a prompt, to later use all that information and generate a 5-page poem for our flow. We're going to go into setting it up, and the function of this agent is a specialist in. You already know that you simply have to take them and drag them onto your canvas in N8N. Alright, let's delete it. And we're going to check that. Well, here we tell you that he's a prom engineer who is in charge of writing children's stories, and to be careful with these directives. This too, again, keep the prompts and poems that ChatGipt will then use to generate the images safe. Like the other nodes, it is also connected to its own Think node, to an OpenAI model and a parser that ensures that it generates a response in an expected format. We're going to run it and move on to the next side. We then move on to our last agent, our agent who is in charge of generating poems. This agent's function is to take the information from previous nodes as the prompt, the theme of our book, and the protagonist to create a poem that is divided into 5 sheets, which is the final size that our book will have. We are going to run it, and we are going to review the result. Ready. He just generated the complete poem for us, and on top of that, he gave it to us structured in this way, which is the right way we need it. This, like the other agents, is connected to its own Think node, to its own parser and its OpenAI node. Let's check the parser. This parser is the one that gives us the answer in this format, a format that we are going to need later. From there we are going to continue. Here it starts to get a little interesting. Don't worry, we are going to review it together so that you understand how we carry out this process. This section here, we are going to review it in parts with the intention that you understand it, since there are 3 inputs that are being generated. The first part is to create a folder, a Word Drive folder, where everything we're doing is created. For that, we need this node, which is a Google Drive node, whose function is to create a folder within your Google Drive account. The first step in setting it up is to simply take your credentials, add them. This configuration is held like this, and this dynamic tag comes from the node that is responsible for generating the topic that our book is going to deal with. You just take it, drag it, and drop it here. For the next step, we need to find the folder within our Google Drive that we are working with. Simply here, you select your Google Drive account, and here you look for the folder that you have previously created. In this case, for me, they were called Books. This folder is going to allow that every time your flow runs, everything it does is save that place. We're going to run it and move on to the next point. Ready. The next step would be to copy the template in order to possibly create a presentation in Google Slides. We are going to perform the configuration, and the configuration is as follows. The same first step would be to add your Google credentials, set up the node in this way, and this dynamic tag comes back from the theme that we chose for the creation of our book. To align this template with our previous node, we need a dynamic tag that identifies the next tag that the Create Google Drive Folder node is generating for us. You just take this one, drag it, and leave it here. We're going to run and continue with the next step. Once the node has been successfully run, it generates the following data that we will need to configure the next node. This node is going to use the presentation we just created to set it up. You just have to set it up. Add your credentials, select Presentation, Operation. We use GIFs, and this dynamic tag comes from the front side of the ID. We just take it, drag it, and run. Done. With all this configuration, we already have our folder created, our template created, and we already have the information of that template that we are going to use to upload our documents. Let's move on to the next inputs. One of these inputs comes from this node. There is no theme, It simply has two nodes and one. This branch comes from the node that generates the character, and the reason for this is because we found that it's an easier way to work when we have the presentation and we have the character separately. So we join all of this into the next node, which is a merge node. This is responsible for joining everything into a single item to be processed later. We see that here we have 3 items from separate paths. This node takes them and joins them into one. Up to this point, our factory has been working on 3 parallel production lines, one for the poem, one for the character, and one for the Google files. The previous merge node we set up has been our first checkpoint and has ensured that these packets arrive together. Now we have a challenge. We have 3 packages and we need our next specialist. Since we cannot send you 3 items separately, that's why there's this node called aggregate. Their work is simple but very important. Package all the information, data, and put it all together. With this single information package, we can now feed the rest of our production line. Ready. Once we go from 3 to 1 item we can go through, and here we see that our flow forks. The first path focuses on the generation of the cover, and from there we are going to start explaining, and now we will take up the rest. This is a native OpenAI node, and its function is to generate the cover of our book. That's why we've written this prompt. We've told him he's an author, and this dynamic tag comes from the people who are in charge of generating the prompt. And we have also told him to use our protagonist for our cover, which is the one that our artificial intelligence agent has just generated. And for this dynamic label, we have told them to generate our protagonist, who is the one who has generated one of our agents. We are going to run it to review the result. While running, I also explain the settings. You have to add your OpenAI credentials. You have to set it up this way, and you have to select an image model of image generation. Here you can select the quality, and you can select between low, medium, and high. I recommend that if you are doing tests, you use the quality drops, and you can choose a resolution. In this case, ours is 1024x 1024. We see the result, and that's it. This is the result that has made us. We're going to go up first, and then we're going to start going down. The next step is to upload and generate the cover of our children's book. For that, we again added a Google Drive node with the file upload feature, and you have to set it up just like this. You have to select your Google Drive account, and to identify the folder, you simply have to do it either by a dynamic tag or by a URL. You get this dynamic tag from the node where you created the folder earlier, which would be this one. Okay, you just take, drag and drop here, and you're done. We continue with the execution to review the next point in our workflow. The next node of its function is to update the cover page of our document in our Google Drive folder. You have to hit the share option, and again, this dynamic tag comes from the previous node of the ID. We just run. That's it. Once executed, we move on to the next node, which is an HTTP request node. It is one of the most used nodes in OpenAI, and the reason is because it offers incredible flexibility. The function of this node is to update the presentation we have made. For that, we use this dynamic tag with this URL so that it knows where it's going to be redirected, and we just add our credentials. This is a slightly different way to add them, but it's a similar process to what you use when you add your Google credentials. In its settings, below we need to select this option to use a specific JSON, and the JSON code is as follows. It basically tells you to take the cover that we've done and update it in the presentation that we've created earlier. We run and move on to the next part of our flow. Alright, now that the cover page is added to our document, the next step to continue would be to extract the information that we just generated with the next node. This node, its name is extract to file, and the function of this node is convert the file we just generated into a base64 file. For what? To make it easier to read later. We're going to run it while we check the next node. This node contains all the information that we generated in the previous nodes, and is the information that will be used to create each image individually. This dynamic tag comes from this point, We just have to take, drag, and drop here. We set up this way and run to review the result. Alright, once our null, extract from file, and set are ready, our goal would be to bring all of that information together that we just split. So for that, we use this merge node that contains the information of each individual leaf that we just generated in the previous nodes. If they are joined by the merge, we have to convert them to an individual item so that they can be read by OpenEye and generate the image individually. Okay, we turn them back into a single item to immediately divide them. This because this path diverges again. One is going to continue the flow, while the next takes this path to generate the images individually. I'm going to run it to review it together, and I'll explain this part to you in a moment. The node here is responsible for converting the base 64 file into readable images. And once we have those readable images, the next node is responsible for generating the text. Let's review the configuration of this new HTTP request that makes a request to the OpenEye API. In this section, we have the request URL and our credentials. We have to have this option turned on and configure in this way, the one that allows us to generate the image generation model. In this case, we are working with GPT-1, which is really the one that has given us the most results. We have the parameters this way, and we have a prompt set up here. We tell you that he is an experienced illustrator who is in charge of adding text to our images. The function of this node is to take the images that we have and add text to them, the information of which is already contained in these dynamic tags. Let's review the result. Okay, this is a relatively common problem, depending on how long you've been using OpenEye's API, and it regularly has to do with service. We're going to add a limit here in this case, and we're going to set it with 5 items at most. To run this step and check that everything is perfect, you can check this in OpenEye's documentation to check how many trades you have per minute. We are going to wait for the result and continue. Ready. It ended. It generated 5 items for us. You can solve this problem by making more use of your API or configuring it in a different way. In this tutorial, the problems we have, once we have those base 64 images, we have to convert them to a readable file. That's why we have this node in this section again, to convert that file in base 64 into images. Once our node finishes processing the images, we see the final result of our children's book. We see the result it gives us. The next step would be to upload all this information to our Google Drive folder. So again, we added a Google Drive node whose function is to upload the files we have just generated. The file name comes from this dynamic tag that comes from the Split Pages node. This node. And to identify the folder that we're working on, we do this through this dynamic tag that comes from the node that creates our Google Drive folder, the one we set up at the beginning of this specific node. We just take and leave in space. We're going to run and we're going to check our Google Drive folder. Okay, so we've already done some testing here. This is the work we are currently doing. Let's see how each image starts to be uploaded individually in this folder. All right, this is page number 1 that we generated together in the previous node. Let's review it. I've just finished. We go in and check that everything we've created has been uploaded. We see that everything we have created has been uploaded. We go back to our workflow, and the next node would be to combine all the pages with text that we have plus the cover. We do this through the merge node. We run it to move forward with our workflow. The merge is configured in this way and generates 5 items. Our job would be to process them to generate an individual item with all the information. The next node works in conjunction with the split out and the sort as a logistics team. It collects all the images with text that we have just generated, along with their page number, and then orders them chronologically, making sure that page 1 goes first, then page 2, and so on. With our pages already ordered, we start the loop. In this part of the flow, he is in charge of assembling everything. This node has 2 important jobs that occur in sequence. First, the loop. For each of the 5 pages this branch runs. The create slides node adds a blank slide to our presentation. To immediately stop, the Update Image node ensures that the page has the correct permissions. And finally, the Add Image to Slides node. Insert the generated illustration on the new slide into our presentation. This is repeated until the loop is finished. We're going to review the configuration of each node so you don't miss any details. Once all 5 images are processed, everything goes out through the node. The ready signal activates the final phase of our production, and this is done through a Google Drive node to convert all our slides in a PDF that contains all the illustrations organized. Finishing this point, the final part would be to upload this PDF to our Google Drive folder. We are going to run it to check that the documents are up while we review the documentation. Perfect, we already have our document up. We already have our folder ready, and we already have our presentation. And to close the production circus, we come to the last step. This node is in charge of updating. Connects with our Google Sheets dashboard. It finds the row that we marked as in process and changes its status to completed. Most importantly, paste the direct link of the newly created PDF so that you can access it seamlessly from your phone from anywhere in the world. And so, our factory has not only created a complete book from scratch, but also updated its own production record. We make today's video. Today you learned how to create your own fully automated children's book factory on N8B. If you want this or other workflows, if you have access to our Minted World community, the link is below in the description. I hope what you learned in this video has helped. See you in the next one. Until next time.